This is the soldier. The soldier can only attack when he's standing still. This creates all sorts of problems, of course, especially when there's onslaughts of aliens coming at you from all different directions. This also means you have to pick your moments very carefully to avoid any bullets or charging enemies. It becomes really problematic as you go deeper into the run. More enemies that can shoot at you or charge at you start spawning, which means you have to be incredibly quick on your toes to avoid all the incoming damage. As many problems as that limitation of this character creates, the soldier also comes with buffs, namely a 50% boost to attack speed and damage while standing still, making the task of completing even the hardest difficulty on the soldier entirely doable. And you see, that's the charm of Brotato. Every one of the 44 available potatoes has their own unique set of pros and cons, guiding you towards a certain playstyle. This expansive roster is also cleverly crafted so that you're certain to experience every single one of Brotato's features and systems. In fact, there's a lot of great stuff to talk about with Brotato, but before we get into the review, some housekeeping. This video is titled Complete Review, so for reference, the requirements for a complete review for Brotato means I have completed all the Steam achievements, I have completed at least one run on every single character, and I have completed multiple Danger 5 runs on as many characters as possible to ensure I have experienced the full breadth of trauma that Brotato can offer. I have done all of that and amassed about 55 hours or more, potentially depending on how much I play after recording this. I am fully aware that some people have racked up over 200 hours on Brotato, and I seriously don't blame them. The quest to complete each character on Danger 5 is a treacherous one where you're bashing your head up against an RNG wall over and over, hoping the shop gives you exactly what you need. As you watch this video, I am doing my best to complete that quest as well, so wish me luck. To be honest, I've struggled to figure out where to start this review. Auto shooters are a genre I love and a genre that I find easy to talk about, but I've struggled to write a longer and more compelling review here. I've always talked about them quickly and broken them down into the pillars that I believe hold this genre up, so what I'm going to do here is just go with the flow. I don't want this review to be cold or calculated. I'd rather it come from the heart, and my heart tells me the best place to start is with the 44 unique potatoes. This is without a doubt the best place to start. Compared to most other auto shooters, Brotato is on the higher side of playable characters, although I know Vampire Survivors has a shitload of them too. As I mentioned, each one of these is designed purposefully so that 1, there's replayability in playing and completing each character, and 2, so that you experience every aspect of the game through the character's list of traits. This is such a simple but genius choice, not to say that it's bad for players to have to go out of their way to experience parts of a video game, not at all, but in the auto shooter genre, it's a genius maneuver that kills multiple birds with one stone. Now, part of the characters are set up so you can experience specific mechanics, such as harvesting, dodge chance, armor, health, or any other mechanic your build will have access to, but the real highlight of the choices on offer are the characters that persuade and sometimes force a different playstyle, like the aforementioned soldier. Take someone like the bull. You can't equip any weapons, but you explode when taking damage, so you're constantly charging through your enemies to kill them, because what other choice do you have? There are also a couple characters focused on things like lifesteal, like the Wildling and Lich, each of them tempting you to play a way that will ensure you're always healing. The roster is home to some potatoes that don't have a real choice when it comes to build, especially on Danger 5. For example, the mage needs to build for elemental damage, or it will fall short. However, these characters are in the minority. Most of the potatoes' pros and cons open up multiple different build paths. That all said, even the characters with strict limitations are fun to play. They are fair and challenging in their own right, and their power creep is just as crazy as any other option. Brotato is so polished and satisfying that even the characters that are the most constricted are a joy to play, and it's incredible to watch your own choices mesh and combine with the progression framework in real time. As proof of my statements, you should know that I generally dislike melee characters in video games, but not in Brotato. Brotato makes melee characters fun and just as viable as ranged characters, and if I enjoy meleeing a Brotato, then that's gotta say something, right? When I first set out the task to 100% the Steam achievements for Brotato, I saw that I only had to beat a run with each character. There was no difficulty requirement to those achievements, so I went around all happy-go-lucky, breezing through each character like it was nothing, and finished all the achievements. I knew that I was eventually going to try and complete as many characters as possible on that Danger 5 difficulty, and this is when I started to learn exactly how I feel about this game, and when my feelings went from being pretty benign to being pretty aggressive. Before my Danger 5 attempts, I was confident and happy with how I felt about the game, but all my critiques were somewhat lukewarm, and all my praises felt like standard praises for good auto shooters. I knew that those feelings wouldn't create a compelling review, so of course I began to challenge and ultimately torment myself. I feel the need to put a lot of emphasis on Danger 5. Danger 5 is a core element of Brotato's replayability. It is the most alluring factor in continuing to play, because finishing a run on each of the potatoes on Danger 5 is not only a rewarding feat, but it puts you in an exclusive club, a club whose character select screen is entirely made of gold. Take it from me, it does not feel correct to complete all characters on Danger 0 and call it quits. The challenge of Danger 5 and the desire for a god run will pull you back in. You will never be content until Danger 5 has been truly conquered. But why? Why, Russell, is Danger 5 so compelling? What about this simple difficulty is so addictive? Well, if you're a completionist like me, then you can understand the appeal. For everyone else, I'd say it comes down to a combination of how satisfying in-run progression is, and also how pure Brotato's skill expression and difficulty really is. The entire in-run progression system is excellent at keeping up the pace, but most importantly, it's excellent at keeping up with your pace. Brotato's upgrades feel seriously meaningful. Other games in the genre will struggle to keep up with their own difficulty curve, or present you with lackluster options that don't really help at all. In Brotato, instead of feeling like the game is outpacing you, you feel like if you're just able to survive to that next shop, then you might be able to get that one upgrade you need, or you might just be able to score that item that can change the entire run. This is a clear-cut sign that the developer is in tune with their game and understands their pacing. This pace is assisted by your level up choices too. These are your basic stat increases, but they feel just as important as the items you buy. Speaking of the items, I won't waste too much time explaining the intricacies because they're not that important. What is important is that each item is easily understandable, each item has a meaningful impact on multiple characters, each item looks great, especially when you realize they stack up visually on your potato, but also that each item is considerably powerful. I also can't ignore the generous rerolling cost of the shop that will ensure you have plenty of chances to get the item or weapon that you desire. All that said, the power offered to you has to translate well to the visuals. That's an important part of that power fantasy that these games like to provide. The numbers are one thing and you'll definitely notice enemies dying faster, but what you really want is to see those visceral visual effects. This is one area of Brotato I wish was a little more extravagant. Every other component of design is excellent in providing the dopamine that you desire, such as the sound effects and some of the visual effects as well. The one part I wish had a little bit more pizzazz is the weapon effects. It's a very minor complaint, and during runs the lack of color and visual ferocity coming from your weapons won't impact the experience meaningfully, but since it's one of my only complaints about Brotato, I have to put it in here somewhere. As a whole package visually though, I mean, Brotato is sick. It's simple, it reminds me of those old school mini-clip cartoon games from back in the day. For sure, the most critical part of the visuals is the ability to identify what is happening on screen and having the ability to distinguish yourself from your enemies and your enemies' attacks from everything else. Brotato succeeds 99% of the time. There are times where I felt overwhelmed by enemies and have lost track of my little potato on screen, but they are few and far between. Overall, I think the visuals serve their purpose. Brotato is through and through a simplistic game, at least in comparison to many others, and the art style represents that nicely, keeping players from feeling overwhelmed and letting their skill shine through in a visual manner. I talk about skill alongside the visuals because in this genre, they go hand in hand, and that's no better understood than in Brotato. As mentioned, Brotato's visuals are simple. I'm unsure what the motivations were behind the art style, but the resulting impact on difficulty is clear. With or without the accessibility options, you'll be able to easily visualize what's happening on screen. Enemies are purple, you are white, and danger in the form of bullets or special enemy attacks are represented with bright red. This means you can focus on dodging, and this means you can express the experience and skills you've gained over hundreds of hours in bullet hells and auto shooters to the fullest extent. Rarely do I feel a death of mine is pure bullshit. It's almost always my fault, and there's something very pure about dying to your own mistakes that motivates you. If Brotato was a visual mess and the elements of difficulty were unfairly thrown at you, then your losses would make you feel resentment towards the game. Thankfully, that's not the case. Brotato only has like 4 different ways you can take damage from the enemy. Red bullets, red slashes, red pulsing dots, and then of course, when you touch the enemy. That's incredibly digestible, and the game allocates more resources to your own enjoyment rather than unnecessarily overwhelming you. This all amounts to a challenge that you're happy to accept and a challenge that is more approachable. In doing so, Brotato separates itself from others in the genre by putting this much of a focus on this challenge. As you're playing Brotato, you'll notice that it feels like a much more succinct experience in comparison to other auto shooters that would throw hordes of enemies at you and progression systems out the wazoo. And look, don't get me wrong, I enjoy that stuff and I love that stuff and it's fantastic on its own, but Brotato feels like a nice change of pace. God runs are what people who play roguelikes dream of when they go to sleep. They're rare, they can be hard to pull off, but once they've started, there's no better feeling. Unfortunately, some of the characters in Brotato feel like they need a God run to be able to beat Danger 5. This really sucks because Brotato's design is adamant in making the player feel in control. So much so that when you lose that control or something happens or doesn't happen that you can't control, it sticks out like a sore thumb. This complaint is also one that will be undoubtedly subjective. I've been following a Steam guide to help with my Danger Danger 5 runs. I've linked it in the description. It's just a couple of lines per character about how to go about beating Danger 5, but on more than one occasion, the author of the guide had significant trouble with the character, and I didn't. It says it took them 10 hours to beat Lich on Danger 5. I did it in one go. This is why previously I said you'll end up bashing your head against an RNG wall, because some of these characters do feel like they need a lot to go their way to be able to pull them off. So I guess I got pretty lucky that time around. There is still an appropriate amount of skill expression within Brotato, but when you get to Danger 5, you start grasping at the extreme ends of skill and luck, and just hoping that you can hold on. To finish off this review, I'll run through how the meta progression works, which, like the rest of Brotato, is incredibly simple. When you go into progress, you'll see a large chunk of achievements. Each achievement has a very achievable challenge attached to it, and your reward for each achievement is an item that you can now find in your runs. That's it. Now, I love me some live service amounts of progression systems. I want weapon levels, weapon mods, mod levels, account levels, rare drops, gear systems, armor levels, trinkets, relationship levels, character levels, percentage increases in stats, numbers going up, sets, etc. I don't get any of that with Brotato, and I'm not expecting it. Don't worry, I'm not an idiot. And yet here I am compelled to continue playing simply for the challenge, simply to say that I did it. This genre is built on multiple foundations, one of which is an abundance of dopamine being pumped into the player's systems. Many games fulfill this by including progression systems, complex mechanics, and a vibrant visual style in their game. Not Brotato. Brotato is here to provide a simple, pure, and challenging game that's not only fun as fuck to play, but one that also rewards persistence and skill. This is my second complete review, but I do want to give these games some sort of subjective but arbitrary rating out of 10. I might discontinue it later, who knows, focusing mainly on what the game is trying to achieve as the utmost important element of the score, and the second most important element being that if the game functions, we start at 0. Like, I feel like so many reviews start their review at 5. Like, okay, the game functions and works, give it a 5 and we can go from there. Like, no, that's not how it should work. If the game functions, you start at 0 and you give it a score based off what it does well. At least that's my interpretation of a good scoring system anyway. Brotato excels at what it's trying to achieve, so it gets a solid 9.5 from me. 0.5 off for my own subjective complaints mentioned throughout, but you can't deny that this game is polished, it's enticing to play, it fits perfectly in the genre, and the amount of content on offer is perfect. Alright, that's it. Second complete review done. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did or didn't, leave feedback below. I really want feedback on this kind of stuff. This is, my series big reviews that I'm going to get into, and I want to be able to perfect them to the best of my ability. So leave feedback below if you did or didn't enjoy it, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you later.